So we're here talking about endoscopic vessel harvesting. What differentiates that from an open harvest? We know open harvesting works. It's been done for years and years and years. The downside to it is a big incision or multiple big incisions that take a lot of time to heal. It causes a lot more pain. There's a higher chance of wound infections. Endoscopic vessel harvesting is a small incision with a scope that does everything you would do during an open harvest, but through a tunnel. So when we talk about the phases of EVH, there's two specific phases that we focus on: the dissection and the harvesting. The dissection phase is when you peel away the connective tissue from the vessel itself. This is like using scissors during an open harvest. It's probably the best way to think about it. Once you've dissected all that tissue away, the vessel itself is easily visualized and better controlled so that you can cauterize through branches or other connective tissue that may still be attached to it. That's the second phase, the harvesting phase. How each of these scopes does these two phases is slightly different. We're going to talk about those scopes here in a minute. No matter what scope you use, we're focusing on three key components. One is, how do you see the vein? How do you visualize the vein in the tunnel? Two, how do you cauterize and or cut branches or the tissue around the vein when you're dissecting it out? And three, how do you protect the vein during your harvest?
One of the most predominant companies available that make vessel harvesting scopes is called MCKAY or Gettinga. They've been around the longest. It's actually the guy that invented the scopes went and partnered with them. They released it to the market. The way that they see that they accomplish that is by this conical tip or this bullet tip that screws onto the end. That helps you dissect the tissue, and all of these scopes have a tip at the end of it, which honestly it just recreates the dissection of the tissue that you do with scissors if you were doing an open dissection. So all of them have this. This little piece here is a trocar that is used because all of MCKAY's scopes use a closed CO2 system, which means we stick this in the incision and we run CO2 through here, and then we pass our scope through this port and we dissect that way. That way it traps all the CO2 in the tunnel. So that's how they do that part. The harvesting part is this device here. This is the VASOVIEW 6 Pro, and this has a cautery foot pedal that you step on to activate the cautery. So this is how you divide the branches. You engage the branch, you cauterize the branch, and then with this specific scope you can cut the branch with the blade. So that's how they accomplish the dividing of the branches. The way that MCKAY protects the conduit is with what they call the C-ring, which is this little device down here that advances, and you basically have to cradle the vein or the radial as you're coming down. So you basically lift it up, you can cauterize the branches, and you just lift it as you go. I really like the scope actually because the cautery is very straightforward. It can handle a lot of different sizes of branches, and I like that I can cauterize and then cut the branch and not have to push through or anything like that. The next scope we're going to talk about is called the HIMA Pro 2. Now there's two versions. There's HIMA Pro 1, HIMA Pro 2. Clever marketing, right? They basically work the same way. So I'm just going to talk about the HIMA Pro 2, but the HIMA Pro 1 is very similar. MCKAY makes this scope as well. So your harvester is going to be the same thing. It's going to be your scope shaft itself with the plastic tip on the end, and you also use the trocar with this too. The harvester for the HIMA Pro looks very similar to the VASOVIEW 6 Pro. It has a way to control the C-ring down here, but instead of the controls being here, the way that they cauterize their branches with this is with this tool here. And this has a switch that activates some jaws at the end that open and close. Now this way you can kind of come up to your branch and you can cauterize on your branch, and then if you hold the cautery down, it will send a burst of energy to divide the branch. So the way that this works is this inserts through the harvester handle, basically the shaft, and then you activate the cautery, open and close the jaws with this button here. Now instead of having a cautery pedal on the floor, your cautery is completely controlled with the switch right here. So you can manipulate this in any direction, you can open and close, and a benefit to this scope is if there's a spot that maybe you didn't dissect very well, you can use these jaws to kind of dissect that tissue open, which is great. The other nice feature of this scope is that it is designed to prevent thermal spread, which is what we talked about in the last portion, where the cautery spreads both directions on the branch. This has a bit of insulation on the jaws to keep the energy from spreading down the branch to your conduit. Now the next scope that we've got here, and this is the newest addition to the EVH market, which is the safina venapax. Now this is a new design, and this was actually designed by the same person that designed the original scope. So he kept making those iterations as he went on, new and new generations. he came up with this, which is a one-step harvesting procedure. So instead of having a dissector and then switching out for a different device to then cauterize your branches, this is all in one. This, the way to see, is also a conical tip like this. The way to cauterize is with some cautery elements that are built into the dissector shaft itself. Now when it comes to safety though, there is nothing to protect your vessel. So this is more of what they would call a no-touch technique, which is a hot button topic that people talk about. And we'll get into that in a different video, but this is designed to do that, where with one scope you can dissect, and as you encounter branches, you can take the branches with this device. So what Terumo does a little bit different, with their dissector, instead of just a conical tip, they have an entire dissection shaft that fits over the lens itself. So it's a lot more robust. Most people say, how do you fit that into a leg or into an arm? But it is flexible. I don't know if you'll be able to see it here, but on the inside there is a metal piece, and then this is basically a plastic tube over the top. So it is flexible, and it's extremely slippery. This is PTFE, which is like a slippery, almost like Teflon. But the way they see is same thing. There's a light that comes from the camera and your scope. There's also centering rings at the tip of this, which help you kind of stay on target, help new harvesters align their scope with the vessel itself. Now the harvesting components, they have, much like some of the other scopes, all the controls are here at the handle. You have basically the cutter, which does not open and close. It's just a cautery blade with some grounding pads on the back. So you can engage your branch, you push it against the wall, that pulls all of that energy away from your conduit itself and helps you divide the branch. And then the way they protect the vessel is with a solid keeper. And so this circumferentially will wrap around the vein itself. It doesn't pull on it, it doesn't pinch it, it doesn't squeeze it, but it just funnels the vein through there, so you're sure that there is nothing left over attached to that vein. Another major benefit, especially to new harvesters, is just this simple design. There's literally one thing that moves in and out. Once you have the keeper on the vein itself, all you do is you turn this and you slide something in and out. So it's very simple. Endoscopic vessel harvesting is an extremely important skill to have for cardiac surgery. The American Academy of PAs, for example, in the US, that's who's doing most of the harvesting, 93% of respondents are responsible for getting the conduit for the case. So it's either a radial or a vein. And 99% of them use endoscopic vessel harvesting. So that is a great skill. It's an essential skill and not an easy one to learn. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you like this information, you want more of it, check out our full course offerings at the link below at vesselharvest.com. And leave us a comment. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Don't forget to like and subscribe so you get new videos as they come out, and we will see you soon.